And welcome to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. This is the show devoted to St. Mary's University and its athletic programs. I'm Dean Beckman, joined by Sports Information Director Donnie Netto. And a big show this week. Again, we have a lot of sports and activities to get to this week. And Donnie, a little bit later on in the broadcast, we'll be focusing on swimming. The MIAC Championships coming up this weekend. So we'll have from the women's team, Grace VanBeest, and from the men's team, Joe Tonda on today's program.
Yeah, it'll be nice to put some faces with the names that we talk about every week with Joe and Grace. They've had great careers here at St. Mary's. It'll be fun to have them on, talk a little bit about their progression through the 4 years here, and talk about the MIC Championships. I know that Coach Bartholomew is looking for some big things from both of them at the MIC Championship, so it'll be nice to get the athletes' perspective heading into what really is their biggest meet of the season.
All right, before we get to that, though, lots to get to in the way of sports, and we'll start, Donnie, with men's hockey, because right now the MIAC conference standings starting to get a little bit log-jammed near the top. The Cardinals right now in a three-way tie for second place in the conference.
Yeah, big weekend for them with 2 wins over Gustavus, 3-1 and 2-0. As we talked last week, very important weekend. They needed to take care of business last weekend, come up with those 2 big wins and outstanding performances top to bottom, and 5 goals in the weekend from 5 different players, which, you know, as we've talked about, is always great to see. And then shutout goaltending by Aaron Davis on Saturday, 31 saves, which is a career high for him, gives him his first collegiate shutout. So a big 2 games, big 6 points for them. Now the hard part is as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, they've got St. John's this weekend up in St. Cloud, and then they're done. So they've got 6 points on the board that they can play for, while 5 of the other 6 teams still have 12 points to play for with games this weekend and next weekend. So very important. It's really comes down to very simply, if the Cardinals want to get in the playoffs, assuredly win one of the 2 games against St. John's. They do that, and they're in the playoffs, and it's that simple. If they don't win against St. John's, there's still several ways they can get in, but it'd be much easier if they could just win one of those 2 games and take all that pressure off.
Right. Beating the Johnnies, though, no easy task. Everybody in the conference capable of beating one another. St. John's really sitting just behind St. Mary's, a few points in the conference standings.
Well, and that's the key right now, is St. John's has everything to play for as well. With the way the conference standings are sitting, St. Thomas has got 28 points. St. Mary's, Augsburg, and Hamlin all have 26. Concordia's got 20, St. John's has got 17. So St. John's needs to sweep St. Mary's for even to have a hope of getting in. St. Mary's wins one of the 2, the Cardinals are in, and then the Johnnies are out, and really then you're playing for positioning in terms of who's going to be in which seed heading into the playoffs. But so this weekend, the Cardinals really determine almost the entire playoff field right now.
Well, and had it not been for my broadcaster's jinx, Phil Heinley also might have had a shutout in goal, along with Aaron Davis. Heinley, though, gave up just 1 goal in the Friday night game.
Yeah, somebody had to mention the S word, and I won't say who that was, but I know, being the color guy, it was not me. So we'll let the viewers determine who that was. But, you know, the goalies played great, and that's, you know, you look at that weekend against Gustavus, 5 goals. That's really kind of below where St. Mary's has been in terms of offense, but yet if you get solid goaltending, Phil gave up the 1 goal really late in the 3rd period, and then Aaron played a great game on Saturday. Heck, if your 2 goalies can combine for 1 goal against, you're going to win a lot of hockey games. And heading into the final weekend of the regular season and hopefully into the playoffs, you need good goaltending if you're gonna go anywhere.
All right, let's get to women's hockey now, Donnie. And the women's hockey team also taking on Gustavus last weekend. And unfortunately, a couple of losses for the Cardinals, games in which they did not score any goals. So all season long, we've been talking about how the offense has struggled a little bit for the women's hockey team, and it rears its head again this weekend.
Yeah, no question. And you've got to give some of the credit to Gustavus. A very, very good team top to bottom. You look at just the Saturday game alone, they held the Cardinals to 6 shots on goal. So if defensively you're only allowing your opponent 6 chances to score, you're going to be very successful. A 2-0 loss on Friday night. Great performance by Ashley Corcoran. She had a career-high 56 saves. Outstanding performance by her. Mara Shields played very well on Saturday. She had 30 saves. So the 2 goalies certainly did their part, but as we were talking with the men, you have to score. You have to You have to generate some offense if you're going to be successful. And right now, they're just kind of in that rut where they're not able to get over the hump and get that offense going. I thought maybe after the Augsburg series, maybe they were going to get something going, but, give a lot of credit to Gustavus. They're a very good team, and they certainly showed that last weekend against
Well, and for
us.
Ashley to get 56 saves, unfortunately in a loss, that has to be close to a school record. I mean,
Well, the funny thing is that is actually 23 saves short of the school
Oh, my
record
goodness.
that Mara Shields had last year. She had 79 saves against UW Superior last year. So, both Mara and Ashley have seen plenty of rubber in their career here at St. Mary's, but, those are two outstanding performances, and hopefully they can keep that going this weekend against St. Ben's. They've got 4 games left, There's no reason they can't run the table and close out the season on a very high note heading into next year, but that'll start Friday with a big game against St. Ben's.
All right, the men's basketball team split this past weekend, an impressive win over Hamlin. At that time, the number 4 team in the conference. The Cardinals then followed that up with a really well-played game against St. Olaf, where they came out on the short end. But that Hamlin win, Donnie, really impressive by St. Mary's.
No question. And, we've talked about this so many times on this show that the Cardinals are right there. They are so close to being one of those 6 teams in the playoff hunt because, they're putting themselves in position to win games. And the Hamlin game is a perfect example. They played a fantastic game from start to finish. When it got close down the end, they found a way to come up with the shots when they needed it. In turn, you look at the Saturday game against St. Olaf, it was the exact opposite. They were in position late in that game, but then St. Olaf is the one that came up with the big shots and the big free throws down the stretch to kind of pull away for that 11-point win. But the Cardinals were right there in a game that really, that final score, doesn't indicate how close that game was.
Yeah, and a guest that we had on the program earlier this year, Wiley Farron, he has just become so consistent of a scorer, of a rebounder, leader out there on the court. I think there's only been 2, maybe 3 games this year where he hasn't been in double figures.
Yeah, he's playing very well. And, we talked about this, and even when we had Wiley on, we talked a little bit about it. It's great to see him, the effort that he has put in from freshman year to now, to see him be rewarded a little bit, not only with team success, because they are enjoying some success, but also with that individual success. He certainly won't admit that, but it's well-deserved. He's worked very hard to get where he is right now, and I think everybody on this team, I'm not going to kind of push the freshmen aside because they just came in, but you look at everybody that's on that men's basketball team and what they have accomplished from start of this year to now, even the start of last year to where we're at now. They've really made some great strides, and Wiley talked about it. They're putting in the time in the gym, they're putting in the time in the weight room, and it's paying off. Smith Pugh has had 2 outstanding seasons here at St. Mary's, and so again, it's good to see these guys put in the effort and get some reward for that effort.
Yeah. And the women's basketball team, really very similar performance to the men. They win against Hamlin on Wednesday, come back Saturday, suffer a loss to St. Olaf. Unfortunately, Donnie, that loss to the Olies really could, in the long run, come back to haunt them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a tough loss in that it really was a game they probably should have won. Puts them at 7-7 in the conference and really is going to make for a tough stretch here. There's 4 games left in the regular season. The Cardinals have got Bethel, they've got St. Kate's, they've got St. Thomas, and then they'll close out a week from of today against St. Ben's. 3 of those 4 teams, Bethel, St. Thomas, and St. Ben's, are all ahead of them in the conference standings. So they're, including St. Thomas, which is unbeaten in 21 games this year. So the job that they have is going to be very difficult in that they've got to find a way to win 1 or 2 of those games, or it's going to be tough for them to get into the playoffs. I still think there's a shot no matter what, but they have to come, to me, they've got to come up with 1 of the 4 if they're going to have a shot at making the playoffs.
Right, and a lot of talent on that team. Some nights, though, they just struggle hitting shots, and that's kind of what happened against St. Olaf.
Exactly, and you actually took the words right out of my mouth. Maybe we are spending too much time together. But, it's one of those things. It was one of those days that they just could not hit a shot, especially when they needed it, and, that happens. I mean,
Right.
Unfortunately, they picked the wrong time for that to happen because that really was a game that I know Coach Pollard would have liked to have had in the W column rather in the loss column.
Let's go now to track and field. It was the Luther Invitational this past weekend, and the Cardinals, with the women and men participating, 11 first-place finishes in that Luther invite.
Yeah, it was a great performances. I know Coach Anderson likes that meet because that is his alma mater, Luther is, and he likes to bring his team, kind of show them off a little bit down at Luther. And, we're going to talk a lot about Becca Dupe, and we're going to talk a lot about Kyle Lichtenegger. And what's interesting with their performances last weekend is they both won the 55, they both won the long jump, and they were both part of the winning 4x200-meter relay teams. So they kind of mirrored each other, but both of them came up with 3 first-place finishes, which is a great thing for them to do, and really a good kind of leader roles for these teams as we really have 2 weekends left before the conference indoor championships. It seems like we just started talking track, and we're already talking indoor championships. But they've got the border battle this weekend, and then they go to Stevens Point next weekend, and then the following weekend, the 24th and 25th, is the indoor championships. So a tight, small indoor season, but a lot of great performances by the Cardinals.
Yeah, and Donnie, you talked to Coach Anderson. He has to be thrilled with the way this indoor season has progressed. Every week, there's so many first-place
No
finishes.
question, and that's the neat thing about this team. He's got some very talented individuals, but he's also got a lot of depth, and that's something that he hasn't had the luxury of having in the past. In that he's got people, he's putting 2-3 people into an event, and they are scoring or they're finishing in the top 3. So yeah, he's very happy with what he's seeing right now, and I'm sure he wishes that the indoor season was a little bit longer because there are some very outstanding performances being displayed, and I think it's really making him excited for that conference championship to see how he will stack up against the rest of the conference.
Yeah. When we had the tennis coach Jeff Hallberg on the Cardinals Nest, he alluded to the fact that the first part of the conference schedule always seems to be the toughest, and that's been proven to be true. St. Thomas this past weekend getting a couple of victories against St. Mary's.
Yeah, no question. We talked to Jeff exactly about that. When you start the conference season with Carleton and St. Thomas, in both the men and the women picked to finish in the top 3, the 2 of them, that's a tough way to start your conference. But, if you look at it the glass half full, they're done with them now. They don't have to worry about having to play those guys, and they can kind of focus on the rest of the season. But I think what it does is it allows the athletes, the players, to kind of see what the real cream of the crop is all about and how good some of the tennis is in the MIAC. And we've got some very talented players. I think it just shows how talented the Carletons and the St. Thomases of the conference are because they are still just a step above us. And it really has to do with a lot in that their depth is just a little bit more than what we have right now.
All right, well, a little bit later on in the program, we'll preview the week ahead for all of the St. Mary's winter sports teams. But coming up next here on the Cardinals Nest, we'll talk to Grace VanBeest and Joe Tonda from the swimming teams here on the Cardinals Nest on HBC. And welcome back to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. Dean Beckman, Sports Information Director Donnie Netto with us, and a plethora of guests today. We have Grace VanBeest and Joe Tonda from the swimming and diving teams here at St. Mary's. Now, Donnie and I feel like we know both of you really well already because we talk about you every single week here on the Cardinals Nest. However, our viewers don't know you very well. So, Grace, let's start out with you. Just tell us where you're from and really how you got into competitive swimming and why you ended up coming to St. Mary's.
Yeah, I'm from a town called Flossmoor, Illinois, which is a south suburb of the Chicagoland area. And I started swimming probably around the time that I was 8 years old. Just neighborhood swim lessons, got involved with the team, kind of just a summer thing to keep me busy, and then it just turned into a bigger level. You get involved in club and high school and then on to college. So.
Yeah, somebody said, hey, you're pretty good at this.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, they noticed a little something in me. So.
And why St. Mary's? How did you end up coming to St. Mary's?
I came to St. Mary's for the swimming aspect. I had heard of the school because St. Mary's does a lot of recruiting in the Chicago area, and I went to a Catholic high school, so we have a connection type thing to the St. Mary's being a Catholic school. And then I got involved with the athletic department, got involved in talking with the coach and things, and it just ended up being the right fit for me. So.
All right, great. Joe, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
I graduated from South St. Paul High School. It's a suburb of the Twin Cities. I came to St. Mary's mostly because of the psychology program. That's my major. But I knew that I wanted to swim, and the previous coach recruited me, and I knew I wanted to be a big fish in a little pond, and and the men's team at St. Mary's has always been rather small, but I really enjoy it down here. So.
I'm glad it was you making the water pun and not me.
Yeah.
Donnie doesn't like when I
Good job, Joe. Proud of you. Joe, can you talk a little bit about that? Because, I mean, in the 4 years you've been here, it does feel like I've written your name and said your name so many times. How has the progression been from when you were a freshman here to now? Because, in 2 weeks, I mean, that's the end. Hopefully not. Hopefully you're going to race in NCAAs. But, I mean, you're toward the end of your career. Can you bring us back to when you were a freshman and kind of talk about how you've progressed as a swimmer to now?
I've really gotten better at paying attention to how I'm swimming and transitioning from Coach Eric to Coach Amber. Their training styles aren't exactly the same, but it's a lot of technical work that I've been able to work on, and they've helped me in terms of technique and everything. And being on a small team, we're all very encouraging of each other, and a small number of teammates can help me better myself by competing with them and everything, by paying attention with them and everything. So.
And Grace, let's talk about events, because both you and Joe are in a number of different events. You go to a competition, say the Minnesota Challenge. I mean, that's got to be very taxing on your body to compete in so many different events.
Yeah, it is. I think a big thing with Joe and I too is we swim some of the longer stroke events too, which takes a lot out of you. We both swim the 400 individual medley. We swim 200s of stroke on top of our hundreds of stroke. And sometimes when we're at a big meet like the U of M meets or at conference, we'll see we're in between 3 and 5 relays, which is about, you can be swimming 9 events total, which takes a lot out of you. And I think it's about the importance of warming up, cooling down, taking the amount of time for preparation before and after events and things like that, just kind of getting your body in the zone mentally and physically, getting ready for your next race, and realizing that when you're in the water swimming a race, you're giving it your all, but then you're out of the water and you have to think, well, I have the next one, so now I need to focus on what I need to do for that. So.
And Joe, if you could just add to that, and this is just going to be for the neophytes, talk about the IM and what that all entails. Many people may not even know what that is.
So to briefly explain it, it's all four. You have to swim all 4 strokes in a particular order: butterfly, backstroke, breaststroke, and freestyle. And it's a real mind game if you're not confident in how you swim all 4 of the strokes. Grace swims it differently than I do because her breaststroke is more of a stronger stroke. I'm more of a backstroker. So the way that you have to swim that race is different based on your strongest stroke, and the 400 IM is obviously way different than the 200 IM because it's more of a pace rather than a sprint. So you have to be more mindful and careful in the 400 IM than the 200 IM with just about how you're attacking each 100 or so.
When you're preparing to do an IM, are you in training for it? Are you focusing more on the parts of the race that are your weaker aspects, or do you focus on just trying to make the strength, in your case the backstroke, that much better?
It's
or a little of both, maybe.
Yeah, it really is a little bit of both. Recently, I've been paying close attention to my turns. Certain turns are better than others. Yeah, it's really. I mean, you can't have one without the other.
Sure.
So each day I try to juggle what I want to work on, whether it's my strengths or my weaknesses.
Okay, good.
I think one of the things, Grace, that I find really interesting is, and I've got to believe I'm not the only one, but you know what? There's more to a swimming practice than just going out there and swimming the length of the pool and then swimming back. Talk a little bit about what a practice all entails, because again, it isn't just go in and do 7 laps of the butterfly, because that's not what you do. Talk a little bit about how practice works.
Yeah, the cool thing about our practices is that we have a lot of different people swimming a lot of different things in practices. So we have a lot of specialized practices, which means that we're split into groups, so each specialization is doing a different sort of practice. We have distance people swimming distance practices, so they have a warm-up, they have longer sets full of variations that can help them in multiple ways. So they'll do a short distance set, a sprint set, and then a long set to kind of target their specific things in races that they need. So for Joe and I, we do IM training. So in an IM set, we could be doing sprint things that target butterfly, and then we'll be doing a distance set that targets butterfly. And we do that within each stroke. We look at each race and we break down what we need, whether it be turns, whether it be arm stroke, whether it be turnover and things like that. It's just kind of targeting every aspect of our races, and I think that's kind of the misconception with swimming is it's, we hear you're swimming 6,000 yards a day. It's like, that's boring. You just swim back and forth. It's like, no, oh my gosh, I don't think I would make it if just for an hour and a half we never stop. So it's just a lot of stopping and figuring out, really breaking down within races what we need. So.
And I'll ask both of you the same question, but Joe, can you talk a little bit about 2 weeks from now at the MIC Championships, a little bit about have you had a chance to kind of think about the fact that this could be your last competitive meet, and secondly, what kind of goals do you have heading in?
I've had 4 years to think about this meet. It's really bittersweet. I've been swimming since I was in 7th grade, so it's wrapping up a decade of work. My goals are just to swim faster than I ever have. I'm really aiming towards the 200 IM school record. I'm only a couple seconds away from that, and I'm really just excited. I mean, I might be in tears afterwards, but I'm going to be smiling because I'm just going to be happy that all this hard work paid off, and Grace will be right there. So.
And how about you, Grace? I know that going to the U of M pool has got to be very positive for you. I mean, you set several records at the Gene Freeman, at the conference championships last year. You had 5 school records. Talk a little bit about the MIC championships for you.
I think this meet, my biggest goal is I had a huge year last year. And I feel good this year. I'm faster right now than I was last year. My main goal is to just be where I was last year. But like you said, I did have big things that I did last year, and I would love, my main goal is to top what I did last year, to re-break the records that I already have, hopefully break 2 more in the IMs, and then last year in the 200 breaststroke, I was only a second and a half off of that NCAA B cut. So I'm really hoping that with training this year and being ahead of the curve where I was last year, that I'll be able to get that. But ultimately, I want to have a fun senior year last meet that could potentially be my last and just enjoy it with my teammates. So.
Well, and Grace, you brought up training. The team took a training trip over Christmas break and the holiday break down south. So tell us a little bit about that. It was not a vacation, was it,
No,
Grace?
it was not a vacation. Our training trip, while yes, we were in Indian Shores, Florida, we had brutal 2-day practices. We had conditioning. It was lots and lots of hard training, The crew that went will say, wow, yep, that was definitely a training trip. Lots of things were tested, but ultimately it was fun. And while I didn't enjoy most of it because it was hard, I did come back in the best shape of my life. So.
Yeah. Joe, did you make it down for that trip?
Yes, I did, and I would agree with Grace. It was definitely. I mean, people I talk to say, well, you just went to Florida. Well, I had to work out twice a day every day. Dry land on the beach is only so fun.
Right.
But it was definitely a worthwhile experience.
Last question for both of you. Grace, you and I would both be in trouble in class tomorrow if we didn't bring up Chloe Morrison.
Yes.
But I want to bring up the women's team in general. Chloe and the others have really done a nice job improving and really playing, swimming well as a team this year. So talk about Chloe and a few of the others.
Yeah, the great thing about our team is that we are small. So we have big figures on our team, and each person is a huge asset. So Chloe Morrison, one of the biggest leaders on our team. She's our other captain. She's our distance swimmer, and she has been leading the records with all of her distance swimming. She swims the mile amazingly. I don't know how anyone does that. She does a great job with that. She swims the 1,000 and the 500, and I'm expecting big things from her, and I think she is too. And then we have strong freshmen. We have Kizzy Bell, who's been kind of my other training partner. She's been a very strong, I think another big name we're going to see at MIAC, hopefully making finals and things. And then across the boards too, we've got Lily Klarstrom and Spencer Johnston also doing big things. Hannah Emiet, another big distance swimmer. So a lot of names that maybe we don't hear too much, but they're going to do big things at MIAC. So.
And Joe, how about the guys?
Lucas Garrids is a very promising butterflyer. He's a sophomore. He's pretty versatile as well. He'll swim just about anything. I mean, we'll all swim just about anything Coach tells us to. But him and Nick Sawchuk. Nick Sawchuk is primarily a sprinter. He's really good anchoring our medley relays, and he's a big part of our freestyle relays. I mean, all of us men. I mean, there's about 5 of us on there now. Brian Mokler just came back from an injury, so hopefully he'll be in good enough shape to perform well at MIAC on our relays. And then Corey Piper, he is also a sprinter freestyler. So we have a very small number of men, but together we perform quite well.
Joe, real quick, what do you hope to do with your psychology degree?
I would like to be right now I'm looking to be a school counselor. I know I have to go to grad school for that. And I also have a business minor, so I might go into human resources or industrial organizational psychology. So that's what I'm aspiring to right now.
Grace, public relations major. How about you?
Yeah.
Plans after graduation?
I'm hoping to work in the mayor's office this summer in Chicago, so I'm hoping to get into the political communications aspect of public relations.
All right. Well, good luck to both of you,
Thank you.
both in the future and in a couple of weeks here at the championships.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Stay tuned here to the Cardinals Nest. Donnie and I will be right back to preview the week ahead here on HBC. And we'll wrap up the Cardinals Nest now by previewing the week ahead and for Cardinals athletics. But first, Donnie, I think having Grace and Joe on the program, just such good examples of our student athletes and how intelligent they are, how hard they work in their both studies and sports.
No question. And what a great 2 guests we could have asked for better representation of the swimming and diving and St. Mary's in general. But I'm really looking for big things from both of them. At the MIC Championships. They both have had such great careers. I know with Grace especially, she's really had a lot of success up at the University of Minnesota pool, and that's where the MIC Championships are. So I look for big things from her. And I see from Joe, just talking to him off camera and whatnot, he's very driven. He wants to do well in this last meet, and I hope that they both succeed, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of them qualifying into the finals, and that would be a huge boost for both of them if they could do that.
Just 30 seconds to tell us about everything coming up this weekend.
Crazy weekend this weekend. The men's hockey, as we talked about, has St. John's up in St. Cloud. The women have St. Ben's here, 7 o'clock, and then 2 o'clock is senior day on Saturday. Tennis has got North Central on Friday at 11 a.m. at the Tennis Center, and track and field teams are heading to Superior for the border battle. So we've got women's basketball against St. Kate's up in the Twin Cities. That's all for this weekend.
All right, that's going to do it for the Cardinals Nest. Thanks for watching here on HBC.